hello, social butterflies. Welcome to the SORMAG Writers Cafe. We're doing something a little different today. We're doing a live broadcast. I'm super excited for our first broadcast. My guest tonight is Rob Keener, author of the marathon Don't Stop the Life and Times of Nipsey Hussle. If you are like me, a little mini fan of Nipsey, you want to hear all about what Rob has to say about this new book. And I am going to let him introduce himself like I always do, so he gets a chance to tell us a little bit about himself, his wonderful new book, and then we'll jump right into the questions. So,
all right, that sounds good. My name is Rob Kenner. I am right here live in the streets of New York. You hear the sirens in the background. We are in the streets the real way. I am the author of The Marathon Don't Stop, The Life and Times of Nipsey Hussle. I'm a lifelong music journalist. I was a founding editor of Vibe magazine going back to 1992 and have published work in a variety of publications since Vibe, including Mass Appeal, Complex, BET, the New York Times, and on till the break of dawn, not to mention Ego Trip. Shout out to Elliot Wilson and Sasha Jenkins. So I've done a lot of different things in the hip-hop music media space. And I was the editor of Vibe Books for a while. We did the book Unbelievable, The Life, Death, and Afterlife of Notorious B.I.G., which was optioned for the film Notorious. Pardon me, there is literally an ambulance pulling around the corner while we talk, but this is how we do it in the streets of NY. I've worked on a variety of book projects at Vibe Books, and this is the first book that I have written completely on my own as the sole author, not under the umbrella of another publication. And it's also the most challenging project I've ever undertaken. It took me 3 years to write this book, and really I've been researching it for 10 years and more, as we'll be discussing in our convo. I'm looking forward to speaking about the writer's life. So thank you, LaShaunda.
Thank you for coming. I'm super excited. As I was telling you off camera, I didn't hear about. I heard of Nipsey. I actually seen the. I was on Instagram when they shared him and Lauren shared the magazine spread that they did, and I thought it was beautiful. And I was like, well, who is this Nipsey? What is he about? I hadn't really heard that much about him. And then I hear later that he's killed, and I'm like, oh my God, I just kind of found him, And my sister name is Stephanie Shines. She loves Nipsey. She was talking about him, and so when he died, she was devastated, and she gave me. She knows I love books, so she gave me his list of books that he had on his page, and she had been reading the books and different things. So he really touched her a lot, and so I was really excited about being able to interview you based for her. And so I asked her a couple of questions. I asked her to send me some questions.
Oh, cool.
So she could kind of be part of that thing. And so her first question was, what inspired you to write about Nipsey?
Well, my inspiration was based on having the opportunity to actually meet him in person, and I think that was something that made me understand what was so special about him. And I think it's interesting, like you say, that your sister was tapped in from an earlier time, and you learned about him later. And that is often the case with Nipsey Hussle. He was never interested in being the most famous rapper in the world. He just wanted to connect with people in a real and genuine way. And so for me, I was in the offices of Vibe magazine in a normal work day, and I got an email that a new artist was coming up to the office to play his mixtape, and I had never heard of Nipsey Hussle before. This was 2009. So he was fairly early in his mixtape campaign. The project was called Bullets Ain't Got No Name. And he came up in the office, and honestly, everyone who was in that conference room that day remembers this young man. The energy that he exuded, his magnetism, his charisma was infectious. And you could just tell that this was someone who was on a mission. And then he pressed play on the tape, and it was so just a powerful demonstration of musical ability. I encourage you to listen back to that tape because especially if you are just getting familiar with his body of work, this is an early project, and I consider it a classic. The whole Bullets Ain't Got No Name trilogy, it's a harder side of Nipsey. This is him really raw, out in the field in Los Angeles. One of the tracks that stuck with me is a track from Volume 1 called Dre Jackin' for Beats, and it's Nipsey flowing over the beat for Gin and Juice, which everybody knows from Dre and Snoop. You can't play with that beat. You have to know what you're doing with that beat. And to speak on it with any kind of authority, you have to be able to back it up. And just listen to that song if you get a chance, and you'll understand what sparked me that day. He knew what he was doing on that track, and I just felt this was a special person, just the way he presented himself to the room and his appearance and everything. He was a charismatic individual. So I took him to the side after the session, the listening session, and I just said, keep doing what you're doing. I like what I hear. We're going to give you all the strength that we can here at Vibe Magazine, and, I'm going to be listening out for you in the future because it was clear he was just at the start of what I thought would be a great career. So the other thing that I felt, having been at Vibe for 17 years at that point, because 2009 was near the end of the run for Vibe Magazine, I had a strong sense of deja vu because, he was flowing over a Snoop track, and a lot of people have said that he kind of reminded them of, Snoop, like his appearance and his cool demeanor and, just something about him, his kindred spirit. And, I guess he got that a lot, but I felt that energy. And, he got his page in Vibe, and then soon after, Vibe actually folded, because our digital strategy was not as on point as Nipsey Hussle's, to be honest with you. Nip was on his way up, and Vibe, sadly, the print publication, ceased very soon after that meeting. So, I kept on the radar with him. I paid attention to what he was doing, and at certain points in his trajectory, I tapped back in, and, especially around Victory Lap, I had a real in-depth interview with him, lasted over an hour. We talked about a lot of different things, and that was a moment when I realized this young man needs to be better understood. More people need to know about him, like even in New York City, which is, a center for the music media, and certainly, a lot of influential hip-hop tastemakers and whatever, they were sleeping on Nipsey Hussle. And I, as your sister wondered why I was inspired, I had a chance to meet him very early, so I knew what was up, but he wasn't like a name that was ringing bells for everybody in the rap world. I think when he did the Crenshaw mixtape in 2013, and sold them for $100 a copy, that caught everyone's attention. They couldn't believe the audacity of that move. And it was a brilliant move, really. It was a visionary move. And he has gone on to change the business model for how to market music. This is a play that now people like Taylor Swift and Justin Bieber are doing. They sell their advance of their latest CD bundled with tickets to their concerts for hundreds of dollars now. And that's directly copying Nipsey's playbook, So he was a visionary, and I saw that unfolding, and that inspired me. And I realized there weren't even a lot of decent magazine profiles of him, like for someone that was such an important force in the culture, he should have gotten a lot more recognition than he did. And I understood after that interview, you interview people all the time, so like certain interviews are a little more than you bargained for. And they kind of open your mind up a little bit. And when I walked out of that room, I realized, I have an opportunity and a responsibility to tell a story here that is, not being told. And, I seized the initiative to make sure that people understood why he was so important.
Why do you think we were sleeping on him? What did we miss about him? Because afterwards, I was like, well, wow, I'm not really I I read that they said he was a gangster rap, so I really wasn't into gangster rap. But I listened to some of his music, and I was like, he was really deep, and so maybe he was before his time, because sometimes it happens like that. People fall in love with you after you're gone, and it's too sad that they missed all that. But what do you think that why were people attracted to him when he first came out? Because that's a long time. You said 2009, and then you didn't see him till, 2019 or something, was it?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I had never heard of him before I met him in '09, but I think, as you mentioned, like you tapped in, a lot of people tapped in after his passing, and he had that big memorial service at the Staples Center, and suddenly here was Barack Obama, writing a letter of tribute, and here was Stevie Wonder singing, songs of praise, and here was Snoop Dogg eulogizing him, and obviously his beloved Lauren London, spoke at his memorial, and, suddenly I think there were people around the world saying, why is this person so important? I wasn't paying attention to him before. But, there is a, like you said, you don't mess with gangster rap, right? And I think a lot of people have a kind of simplistic view of Nipsey Hussle, to the extent that people understood anything about him. They heard that reputation. They heard that he was real in the streets. They heard that he was about that life, and there is some truth to that. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but he was a lot more than that, and that's what the book, The Marathon Don't Stop, is really about. It's not to glorify any of the hustle and the gangster life. If anything, I'm trying to show the human being behind those cliches and try to get behind what does it even mean when we talk about gangster rap. What does that actually mean? I think that's a term that's been put on hip-hop by the mainstream media to kind of demonize voices from, a lifestyle that a lot of people don't want to understand. They don't want to know what it's like to walk in those shoes, and they would like to say, oh, those are bad people that destroy society, and those are the wrong set of people to get involved with. And, I was indoctrinated like that. A lot of people in America were indoctrinated to believe those things. We learned things from movies and music videos and articles in the media, and you have to check your sources and go deeper, So in writing this book, The Marathon Don't Stop, I had to really wrestle with some of those concepts and those preconceived notions and dig a little deeper and say, like, okay, who are the real gangsters? What does it mean to be a gangster? America was a country that was built by cowboys and gangsters, if you really check it out. And, like, a lot of people had never heard of the Proud Boys until they tried to overthrow the government in January 6th. They ran up in the U.S. Capitol building, and, people lost their lives over the incendiary rhetoric of a president who had lost the election and couldn't accept the fact, So, who are the real gangsters, right? When I looked into the history of Los Angeles street culture, going back to, there was a gang called the Spook Hunters, which was a racist white gang that had the backing of the police force, and they used to terrorize young black children on the way to school. They used to terrorize black families that were dared to move out of the confines of certain neighborhoods that they were expected to stay within, which is where that concept, if you've heard of the phrase South Central Los Angeles, that is all to do with a government policy where black families were supposed to live only south of a certain road and near Central Avenue. So it's like a whole system that is put in place, and I had to do my research to even understand that. And Nipsey Hussle knew these things. Nipsey Hussle was a very self-educated person, very astute, big reader of books, and that's why to write a book about him is no small undertaking, and I took that very seriously. I took the responsibility seriously. You'll see there are like dozens of pages of footnotes in this book to document exactly where the sources came from for this information, because I'm saying things that were, not taught to me in school. I had to go look for them and learn about, like I watched a documentary called Bastards of the Party, which I strongly recommend to anyone that hasn't watched that film. I read a book called City of Course by Mike Davis. You know, I started to delve into the real history of Los Angeles and the real history of America, frankly, you know. So, you know, with gangs like the Spook Hunters that were working with the police force to intimidate black families, it was only natural that neighborhoods had to have their own groups to protect themselves, you know. So you had groups like the Slawsons and the Businessmen and a lot of other neighborhood organizations that you could call them gangs, you know. They weren't like gang banging like you see in Boys in the Hood. That's later in the evolution and de-evolution of you know, street culture in Los Angeles. But, you know, the Slawsons were there to protect the neighborhood and to chase the spook hunters away if they tried to bother people, you know. So Nipsey name checks the Slawsons all the time in his music. And he even, before he started his label All Money In, No Money Out, he started Slawson Boys Records. You know, and he had a rap group of him and his homies. When he was getting put on with the Bullets Ain't Got No Name tapes, he also had his own group called the Slawson Boys. So he was actually referencing those things in his music and in his platform. So to say, like, he's gangster rap, yeah, but there's more to it than that. So don't go for the, like, broad brush generalizations, you know, dig deeper. And that's why this book is 400 pages with a lot of footnotes, because I want people that are interested in Nipsey as an artist or hip-hop as a genre, you know, it's the most popular genre of music in the world. I want them to get a little history on where this all comes from. What is the purpose of hip-hop? What is the purpose of, you know, Nipsey having Slawson Boy tattooed on his back, you know? Because he's trying to redirect the street culture of L.A., which has become, you know, Slawsons went into the Black Panthers. You saw what happened to the Black Panthers. If you watched the film Judas and the Black Messiah, if you didn't know your history, at least you might have caught that movie. You know, the government targeted that organization and took the leaders down. So out of the ashes of the Panthers rose Crips and Bloods eventually. And, you know, they were doing their best, because Crips is a acronym for Community Revolution in Progress. A lot of people don't know that, you know, and there's a whole history there. And then eventually they were turned against each other, and rivalries rose up, and drugs and weapons came into the picture, and, you know, it wasn't always about that, you know. So I believe that Nipsey was trying to redirect the street organizations back to their original purpose. I think that was his larger goal. You know, and that's not a small thing to do. It's easy to say, and it's a lot harder to put in practice. If you think about, like, uniting the whole streets of Los Angeles, block by block, each block, it's not just red and blue. Each block has its own culture. So he was a uniter and not a divider. And when we said gangster rap, I think a whole set of assumptions goes with that, which need to be really, like, double-checked before you run with it. So I gave you a long answer, but you touched a key point on that, and I wanted to make sure.
That was actually good. I like that you touched on the points that you did, because I am a music lover, so I like all types of music, and I was guilty of gangster rap. I didn't like gangster rap, you know, but NWA kind of changed that for me. And so, you know, so you have to go a little bit deeper with music. Music is for me, rap is all about poetry, I think, really. It's what people think in their head, and they put it down onto some music. There's some rap out here that's crazy. They don't make no sense, but, you know, just listening to his stuff, he was really deep. And I love that you put the footnotes there, because sometimes people need to know. You know, a lot of people, I am one of them people, once I read somebody and you wrote some footnotes, I'm going to go look at that. All these movies you talk about, I'm going to go write them down and go check them out. I'm that type of person, but I know there's other people who feel the same way. And, you know, with Nipsey, he was one of those people that he just didn't say, oh, I read a book. He told you which books he read, you know, what he got out of those books. And that I really admired about him, because I was like, you know, it's not that many. They always say black men don't read. So it's wonderful to see a black man that's reading, and then he's telling you what he's reading. It's not about
he shared his list with everybody. I mean, he didn't finish high school. You know, Arius Askedom did not finish high school, but he was building his own computers when he was still a high school, out of parts, reading articles in magazines. So this idea that, you know, black people don't read, I've been hearing that when I was at, you know, in the early days of Vibe, when Quincy Jones wanted to start Vibe magazine, there were people at Time Inc. that said, "Our hip hop fans going to read a magazine," you know, and it's just not true. Let's just say, I mean, you know, this is part of the racist indoctrination that America has put on a lot of us, and you know, the truth is different. And you know, I'm proud to say that the Marathon Don't Stop is on the New York Times bestseller list. And I know who bought that book. I know who's reading the book because we are in touch with almost everybody that's posting it on social media. We hit them back and we repost because we're connecting with the people who support this book. And it's everybody from every walk of life. You can't limit knowledge, you know, like people that want to limit knowledge do that for a reason. And we're about like empowering people with knowledge. So this book, you know, you're going to learn about Nipsey Hussle, but you're going to learn about American history. You're going to learn about LA history. You're going to learn about hip-hop history, you know, and it's all presented in the proper context by me as somebody that has been working in music journalism my whole life. And like I said before, it's the most challenging thing I've ever attempted, and I'm just really humbled and pleased that people have really supported and embraced the project. And, you know, I really hope that, you know, more people will pass the word on. I appreciate you so much for shining a light on the book tonight.
Thank you for being here. How does the family feel about it?
I mean, the family, you know, I had a chance to speak with Nip's older brother, Black Sam, and his younger sister, Samantha Smith. I've sent the book to them. I haven't had a review or feedback from them as yet, but I pray that they receive it in the spirit in which it's intended. It's, you know, written with 100% love and respect, and I made this clear in the book and also in all the press that I've been doing. You know, I made the decision on my own. It's not an authorized book. It was not done in collaboration with the family. You know, that's a different kind of a book. This is me as a music journalist putting it out there to, you know, like I said, I didn't think Nipsey Hussle was properly presented in the music media, and I just thought there was a need to tell this story. But, you know, I made a decision to donate proceeds from the book to the family just because I wanted to do that out of respect. But I haven't gotten a chance to chop it with them yet or have a review of the book from the family. But like I said, I pray that they feel the love that went into it.
Yeah, I hope so too. Do you think the marathon will continue to make its mark in the world through Nipsey?
I'm sorry, you said, will the marathon continue?
To make its mark on the world through Nipsey's legacy.
I'm not sure. Can you just say that a little louder? I'm not hearing you.
Can you hear me? Okay, this is one of my sister's questions. So she said,
okay,
do you think the marathon will continue to make its mark in the world through Nipsey's legacy?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, without a doubt. And that's why I wrote the book. I think it's important that, you know, people understand what he was really trying to do. Okay. You know, there are a lot of inspiring rags to riches stories in hip-hop. We can go back through all the great self-made moguls who have built it from, you know, the ground up and made amazing, you know, inspiring stories. We know Jay-Z, you know, went through all the things he went through in Brooklyn, and he's now a billionaire. You know, he has now built a company called Rock Nation that is, you know, one of the most powerful foundations for hip-hop in the business world. What Nipsey was doing is different in this sense. You know, Jay didn't try to build Rock Nation in the Marcy Projects. You know, he didn't build it where he grew up. And that's what Nipsey did. And that's extremely challenging to do. And I want people to understand that and hopefully to emulate his example. And I think that's the best way that the marathon can continue is for people to understand that it was important to Nipsey not just to blow up and get paid and secure the bag and all that, but to empower his community and to reinvest all of his success into the streets that raised him and open businesses that would employ not just him and his direct family, but all of his friends, all of the people he knew, like people that were just random folks from the neighborhood. He found a job for them and made a way for all of them to uplift and, you know, created opportunities for kids in the neighborhood to learn about science and technology. You know, this was his real marathon. It wasn't just like to be a super capitalist and get the biggest deal with the biggest company. He wanted to own his own thing. That's why his label is called All Money In, No Money Out. It's economic self-empowerment, and that's how the marathon continues if people get to understand. And I'll tell you this, because I know time is flying when we get into these combos. I can talk all night, but the last conversation that I had with him, the last question, I said to him, you know, Nipsey, I really respect the fact that everything that you do, all the insights and all the, you know, game-changing concepts that you come up with, you share them in your music and in your interviews. It's like you don't want to keep it a secret to yourself. You want everyone to know how they can follow in your footsteps, and I really respect that. And he said, you know, well, I'm not outside handing out bags of money, but Nipsey told me the game is free. And all I ever expected when I was a kid was that the OGs would give us a little game. You know, you don't have to tell us all the secrets, but just give us the game. Let us understand how we could get it popping ourselves, you know. And if you're secure in your own ability to hustle, then you don't have to keep the game a secret. You could give a little bit of game up to these young people to follow in your footsteps. And if you don't, it's almost like you're hating on them, you know. It's almost like you're blocking their blessings. So this book is my attempt to carry on that intention that Nipsey had, to give away the game to as many people as will listen, as many people as want to learn. And that's how the marathon continues. That is exactly how it will continue.
That's great. I love that. I really love that concept, too. I love of sharing, because sometimes we think we can only be on top of the mountain. Nobody else can come up with us, you know. And I think that's what he was showing, that we all can get a piece of this pie if we want it. So, like,
no doubt about it.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to ask my questions about your writing, your editing, and stuff like that. But first, I want to know, what was your favorite part of writing this book?
I mean, the favorite part, honestly, was the day that I knew it was really finished and was really going to come out as planned. And, you know, writing a book is not unlike running a marathon. Mm-hmm. You know, when you write a article, you usually can do it in a few days, but this book took me 3 years. And, you know, there's a lot of different layers to a lot of things that I had to weave together. And that was a very challenging thing, especially with the responsibility of telling the story like someone like Nipsey Hussle and representing him properly. So many people love him. You know, your sister being one, and, you know, his family, his close homies, the people that trusted me to tell his story, the people who spoke with me. I carry that responsibility very, very seriously. You know, I take it as, you know, my life's work, really, you know, as a music journalist. And, you know, having worked on all the things we did at Vibe, I learned, you know, covering the lives of Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls and, you know, so many other greats. But Nipsey was something different, and so my favorite part was just knowing that the book was finished and it was done properly, and we had every fact nailed down and all the footnotes were in place. That was the last thing we did, was finishing all the footnotes and getting those all together, and that was the moment when I could really exhale. But I'll be honest with you, it was a lot of weight on my shoulders through this process to get it just right. And, you know, I'm thrilled that people have been able to tell me that they, you know, believe, not just, you know, I'm happy every reader that enjoys it, but the people that know Nip and have read it, that's the opinion that I care about the most, because they can check it against their real life experience, and it's been all positive so far, so I'm very pleased about that.
Great, that's great. So I know you've done a lot of interviews. What do you think makes a good interview?
The best interviews are the ones where you're listening and it's not a Q&A, it's a conversation. And the best questions are the follow-up questions, not the ones that are written down on a piece of paper. So you have to listen and be present in the moment. And, you know, that's the key to everything, is just like make it real, make it a real conversation.
That's one of the things that I try to do with my podcast, is when people come on, they got what? Send me the questions. I said, because sometimes I might not go with the question, you know. So I love that. I love being able to. I call it sitting at the cafe. We just talking. We just talking. I'm enjoying this. I'm learning a lot.
That's. So listen, I know that we could definitely chop it again, but I have something scheduled back to back tonight. So
okay.
One last question and then wrap.
Okay, all right. I had some good questions out.
I know. It's hard because I'm the same way. I always have like 100 questions, and then the time be ticking on us sometimes. But yeah, I've enjoyed this, and I want to make sure that I hit everything, but it's just the time is running away.
Okay, so this is my last question then. How does it feel, you being the interviewer, being the interviewee now? You're being the interviewer. Interview. I can't talk. How do you feel? How does that feel for you? Because you're usually the one asking all the questions, so now you're being asked the question. How does that feel for you?
That is an excellent question, and I will be honest with you, I don't like it. I have been doing a lot of interviews since March 23rd when the book came out. The first one was Good Morning America, which was extremely nerve-wracking because it was only like 3 minutes, and this book is 400 pages with footnotes, and what are you going to say? You know, a lot of people are watching, and you want to hit the right points and not go off on a tangent and sound crazy. So anyway, this conversation is cool, and I've gotten used to it, but I am much more comfortable asking the questions than answering them. That is for sure.
I'm sure. So can you tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you? Do you have a website? Do you have social media?
Absolutely. So on social media, it's Robert J. Kenner on Instagram and Twitter, and then the website is robertjkenner.com. Okay. So that's my full name. I go by Rob Kenner on my bylines, but for social, Robert J. Kenner in New York.
Thank you so much, Robert. I appreciate talking to you. I am so looking forward to finishing this book. It has so many goodies in it, so I'm looking forward to finishing it. I definitely will post this on YouTube, and I'll send you a link when it goes live. I'm going to post it tomorrow. And I thank you for taking time to talk with us, and I wish you much blessings with this book, and hopefully you reach a lot more people. And maybe you make the #1 list, hopefully. That would be fantastic for you.
Your mouth to God's ears, but I just feel blessed, honestly, to be on the New York Times list is like beyond my wildest dreams. You know, I think it's a victory for hip-hop. It's a victory for the legacy of Nipsey Hussle, and I'm proud with my first book to reach those heights. So, you know, but thank you for the support on this and, you know, for spreading the word. Every writer wants people to read their work, and, you know, I just send this out to every person that watches your podcast who's working on something that they think is challenging or, you know, they're not sure if they can get it just right. Just keep at it. Lay up 1 brick a day. That's something that Nipsey Hussle said in his interviews. Lay 1 brick a day, and one day you're going to look up and realize that you built a pyramid. So, you know, much strength to all the writers out there, and thank you for taking time to chop it with me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right.
Good evening.
You too. Good night.